Namaste. Welcome to the That's So Hindu podcast. I'm Raj Rao, Managing Director here at the Hindu American Foundation. Today we're joined by a special guest, a dedicated public servant, Texas State Representative Jean Wu. Representative Wu emigrated from China to the United States at the age of 4, growing up in the Houston area and completing his bachelor's at Texas A&M, his master's from UT Austin, and law school at the South Texas College of Law in Houston. After starting his career as a prosecutor with the Harris County District Attorney's Office, Jean Wu was elected to serve as the Texas State Representative for District 137 in 2012. Now in his 7th term, Wu serves as House Minority Leader as well as on committees pertaining to juvenile justice, appropriations, redistricting, and criminal jurisprudence. In addition, Wu is active with his local communities, especially on issues relating to public safety, child welfare, education, as well as Asian American and other minority communities. As an attorney in private practice, Wu also serves as guardian ad litem, representing minors in court and criminal CPS cases. Thank you, Representative Wu, for joining us. We have a lot of stuff to talk about. Obviously, very big time in the news, and I think one of the things that has affected our community, and this was something that you had spoken about when we met last September, is kind of the rise in hate and how a lot of different communities are going to be affected by this. Sometime, after 9/11, it was Muslims. COVID, there was a lot of the anti-Asian hate, targeting Chinese Americans. And I think, I don't know if you probably noticed over Christmas and then going into the New Year and then up to now, there's been a really noticeable uptick in anti-Indian and anti-Hindu hate, including a recent hate crime in Palm Beach, where a nurse was almost beaten to death. Yeah, so I'm just curious, your thoughts on that, because I think what you were saying in back in DC last September, it seems to have really panned out, and it's a little scary.
Yeah, I've been working on the anti-Asian legislation around the nation. I've gone to communities in many states and talked to them. And when I go talk to a mixed group of Asians, where there's East Asian, South Asian, and everyone else there, I remind people, like right now, these laws don't directly target you, but they will, because at the heart of this legislation, they shout about national security and all those things, but at the end of the day, what this really is the exact same thing it was 100 years ago when they passed these laws, right? They passed these exact same type of laws 100 years ago. They were found to be racist. They were found to be discriminatory. They were found to be unconstitutional, and they were repealed. And right now in 2024, 2025, we're passing them again. And what these laws back then were about and what they're about today is get out. They're about telling communities to get out because they're not wanted. And they're looking for reasons to hate. They're looking for reasons to tell people to get out. And the way they did it in the past was saying, well, we're just not going to let them buy land. Well, and so they can't live here. And then they say, well, we're gonna say they can't go to school here. And then they say, we're not going to let them work here. And each and every single one of those, they say, well, this is for our community safety. All right. But what it really is we don't want those people in our communities because we just don't like them. So we say they're a danger, they're a threat, right? At the end of the day, if you want the easiest explanation to what this is, it's this. Asian Americans didn't really come to this country until about the 80s, 90s, and most 2000s, right? And when the top 30%, 40% of Harvard is nothing but Chinese, Vietnamese, and Indians, people start getting upset because, Chinese people, Indian people who are going to Harvard, they're not displacing Black and Latinos. They're displacing rich white families who have gone there for generations, right? And so people kind of get mad about that, as excited as immigrant families are about their kids going to Harvard, Yale, or wherever else. Those families are excited too, but when they lose those spots, right? The people who weren't even here 30 years ago, people get mad, right? And we don't like to talk about this because we grew up in a time when we were taught that America is a society, we're supposed to be race blind, we're supposed to be equal, we're supposed to be just, we're supposed to be all these things. And you and I all grew up in this country, like understanding that, believing that. So when we talk about, say, hey, America's not really as equal, not really as just as we say it is. In fact, some of this stuff is really, really at the surface. We've just ignored it. We've whitewashed it. We've pushed it under the covers, right? And I'm sorry, this stuff's coming back out. I mean, the rise of Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, has spurred the increased visibility of white supremacists. Period. And I know people don't like talking about it, but you really can't deny it.
It's definitely very noticeable. I mean, and I have to say, like, I've spent most of my adult life in California, and it's been amazing. You would think that it's very tolerant, but I have personally witnessed a lot of like very explicitly like anti-Asian hate. People like I'm parking the car and I'm with Chinese American friends. Someone yelling the C word right out the the car driving past.
Yep.
And
yeah,
it's amazing how quickly it can just like show up, and then you think it wasn't a problem. And a lot of our communities, like both Chinese and Indians, like we take pride. We love talking about how we are high income, we are in these top schools, we are in tech. Yep. But that actually does kind of make you a target from what you're saying, right?
And the thing is, the Asian community have used these things, have used like this concept of we build wealth, we build wealth to protect ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And what we have to what I need to tell them is like, dude, not only is your wealth not protecting you, that's actually one of the reasons why they're mad at you, right? Because you're coming in and taking the things that they've taken for granted all these years, you've displaced them, and they're pissed, right? And I think people have a really hard time dealing with that, because even to this day, I still get friends who are Asian and they're rich, and they come to me and say, hey, they won't let me into the country club. And I'm like, yeah, because you're not white, right? And did you not know that you're not white? But they have this belief that, oh, no, we're way past those days. We don't do that anymore, right? No, we're just not as out loud about it as anymore. But those things still exist everywhere. And this is the way to describe it. Look, think about when our families came, right? My family was mid 80s. And we were one of the first ones. Don't forget that the Chinese Exclusion Act, which didn't just ban Chinese, it basically banned all Asians, right? The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 was not fully repealed until 1965, right? 1965 is not that long ago.
It's really not.
People who were born before 1965. So before 1965, there were only 105 Asians allowed into this country in a 1 year's time. And so our people really didn't start coming to this country until the mid 70s, because even after the law was repealed, it takes some time to get all the stuff ready and get people and for people to come over, right? My family came in the mid 80s. We're one of the first of the 80s. And then most of the other families came after that in the 90s, and a lot more in the 2000s, and a lot more today, right? And so Asian Americans, whether you're Indian, whether you're Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, whatever, you've never really known an America where you did not already have rights, where you were not already accepted, where at least at minimally people tolerated your presence and just gave you your own space, right?
Yeah.
But I tell people, you may not remember a time when you were not welcome, but other people remember lots of times when times were great and you were not here at all. Does that make sense?
That's very dangerous. Yeah, it's a very absolutely. That's exactly what's going on, right?
What does make America great again look like? When was America great? If you ask the boomers, when was America great? They would say 1950, right? If you were a white boomer, that was your childhood, and things are great. Your parents had who only had a high school diploma, had a union job that paid well. Your mom stayed at home. You had a house, and you had a car. You went to a great school. You went to college for basically free. The short of it is, the Indian community needs to fight for its rights. Because I think for like, just like most East Asian communities, we have fallen under this spell where we've been told, hey, everything is fine. You guys don't need to do anything. Just be good little workers, be good little Asians, and just work hard and keep your mouth shut. Don't be like the Latinos. Don't be like the Black people. Don't yell and protest and demand rights. Just do your job. Just work hard, and everything will be fine, right?
Yeah, that's what I was told.
Yep, and that's what I was told, and that's what our parents took to heart. And you ask my parents, oh, have you ever experienced racial discrimination? And they go, oh, no such thing. Never. But then you start asking them, hey, asking about individual incidents. Hey, there was an incident where, at work, and they did this and did this, and goes, oh, yeah, okay, but that's not discrimination. I mean, I know it was because I was Chinese, but our parents sort of like wash us away because we have the myth of the minority. We have to live up to the status of the myth. We have to be good little Asians who never complain and just work hard and make money. And what I tell people is, that's fantastic. If that actually protected us, if that actually protected our community, I would say go for it. But being silent and being silent while people are punching you in the face does not encourage people to stop punching you in the face.
Yeah, you have to respond. You have to fight back.
Yeah. No, and this is the thing. The entirety of the Asian American community needs to destroy the myth of the model minority, because we are people like everyone else. We have our needs, we have our desires, and we have feelings about our community. We have pride in our community, and we're not here to be your punching bags, right? We are not here to take your slaps and kicks and then smile at you and say thank you, right? We deserve the same respect that every community in this country has. But here's the problem. You don't get things in America just by simply being here. You earn them. You fight for them. You win them. No rights are given. Rights are taken. And that's what I want our community to do. I want us to come and take our rights back. And we cannot sit at home and just pretend that having money is going to fix it, right? We cannot sit at home and pretend that being quiet is going to, and being nice is going to fix it. And I know that I get responses from my people, like my parents, who say, "Oh, we shouldn't go out in the streets." That's what the others do, right? That's what the bad minorities do. And so we gaslight ourselves into this like sort of like state of learned helplessness, where we don't like what's going on, but we are unable to do anything about it. And I know my parents may still not be willing to go do something about it, but I will. And I think other people will. I think that, the younger people, that people who are just tired of it, we need to go fight. We need to go fight for our rights. We need to go to the rest of America and say, this is our country too. We have earned a spot in this country, and we demand respect. I think that's, at the end of the day, that's it. I don't think the Indian community should take this line down. I think y'all should get organized. I think you guys should fight like hell. Because
absolutely.
This stuff, and again, as I keep telling people in the community, if people are insulting us, if people are coming after us, people using us as a scapegoat, using us as a punching bag, just simply not doing anything is not going to get them to stop, right? Asking nicely is not going to get people to stop. Bullies only stop when they get punched back. So we got to start punching back. That means the Indian community, whenever there is an incident, when somebody makes a racial stereotype joke about about cows or whatever it is, and all these other things, go after them. Don't tolerate it. Pour in everything the community has. Like use the community, say we're going to threaten that business. We're going to threaten their contracts. We're not going to do business. And no one in the Asian Indian community should do business with this company. And go on, so on and on. It may not work. It may not work, but it might. But it's something. Do something.
It's great that you bring that up because, I was, when I was doing some background on this, I was looking at there was a website I came across. It was texasracistbills.org. And it just seemed like there's a lot of legislation targeting Chinese Americans just in the state of Texas. And I mean, my understanding is even one of them, this not one more inch or acre act, is even targeting green card holders. I mean, it's very like the idea that, and we've seen this, targeting Indians and Hindus in various ways, but this is a very organized attempt, to it really kind of disenfranchise like Chinese Americans, right?
And it comes from the same place. You will find the exact same thing and the proposals in Project 2025. Before the election, I went to communities and I told them that our communities will be under attack because Project 2025 said so. And people ignore me, people poo-pooed me, people like brushed me off. And, after Trump won, I mean, even before Trump won, the anti-Indian stuff was getting really, really hot, especially with J.D. Vance's wife and stuff, right?
Yes.
And, and then of course, the most damning part is J.D. Vance basically just not putting up any kind of defense of his own family. That's a whole different matter, but things are going to get worse. Things will get worse. There is a rise in white supremacy in this country. I know a lot of Asians, a lot of Chinese people, a lot of Indians feel like, well, if I hang out with the white people, if I'm rich like them, then I'll be spared.
Mm-hmm.
Just like my friends who are trying to get into the country club, they're not buying it. They said, but wait, I'm rich though. I'm rich. Yeah, so are they. They're rich too. They don't care.
Yeah.
They care that you're not white. And as much as we hate saying that, that's the reality of our society. There are simply people in our society for whom race, the color of your skin, is the absolute most important thing. And, what that says about them is what that says about them. But the fact that they exist, the fact that these kind of people exist, I don't think people should try to deny that. It's not healthy. We're lying, gaslighting ourselves.
And one of the ways that I feel like they do this a lot and is like, with China, a lot of times when I see these types of legislation, they kind of bring in this national security angle. China's obviously a large country. Personal experience, like before HAF, I worked for Chinese owned companies. So like I've worked for companies that have owned property in the United States, have invested in this country. Like, sure. Are there culture clashes? Yes. Are they from China and do they support their government? I would assume so. But does that mean it's a national security threat? And does that mean that you should disenfranchise Chinese Americans because Chinese companies want to buy property here?
It's actually even worse than that. Because here, think about it this way. The trope of national security has been used many times before. So like before World War II, about 20 and 30 years before World War II, states all over the West and South started passing alien land laws, like laws basically saying Japanese Americans, Chinese Americans cannot buy land. They don't care if you're a citizen. They don't care how long you've been here. Like if you're in this racial group, you cannot buy land. And the rationale they provided for not being able to buy land is that, Japan is a rising power. Everyone knows that the Japanese are only loyal to the emperor. Everyone knows that. So we have to preventatively protect our community by making sure that they cannot purchase land here. They cannot rent from us. And even if somehow they manage to live here, they can't work and they can't go to school. Right? Sounds all really familiar today. They say, oh, we have to ban Chinese immigrants from buying land because come on, everyone knows that Chinese people are only loyal to CCP, and it doesn't matter that they've been here. They've been here for 30 years, and they're United States citizens, and they're a member of Congress. If they're Chinese, they're going to be loyal to the CCP, right? And you hear all these things, and like those sound awfully familiar, right? Don't those two things sound really, really similar? Right? And you think about it this way. In World War II, during the Japanese incarceration, the American government rounded up 125,000 plus Japanese American, basically every single Japanese American in the entire United States. In comparison, the United States rounded up fewer than 10,000 Germans plus Italians together. And the Japanese who were rounded up, the Japanese Americans who were rounded up, 2/3 of whom were American-born citizens. Right? They rounded up people who were full Japanese. They were rounded up people who were half Japanese, 1/4 Japanese, 1/8 Japanese, people who completely and absolutely denied under oath that they were Japanese in any way, shape, or form. Right? So why take everyone? Why take people who denied that even Japanese? Why take people who are 1/8 Japanese? Because having one drop of blood means that you're loyal to the emperor. Look what they do to Ted Lieu. Ted Lieu in Congress is a decorated U.S. Army colonel, a decorated U.S. veteran who has given basically his entire life to the service of this country. They call him a CCP spy every single day in social media. Every single day.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Right? Because why? Because the character of the person and their actions don't matter. For Asians, the only thing that matters is we know that you're only loyal to home country. And that is a racist trope that has been used against our people, all of our people, since the very beginning.
Yeah. It really does seem like there's only one, like either you have to completely disavow and almost be hostile to it. But if it's like you're just a normal person from India or China, you're coming here. Yep. You're living your life.
Even people who disavow. You saw the stories of people like Chinese Americans who went to Trump rallies, who were big Trump supporters, who are very, very much anti-communist and everything else. They got chased out of the event as being CCP spies.
You're right. I mean, even it doesn't matter. Yeah, even that doesn't matter. Like you could be assimilated, you can speak perfect English, you can not speak Chinese, you can speak Chinese. In the end, it's like the racism. It's if people think of you as not one of them, then you're not one of them.
And that's exactly it. And I think for the Indian community, I think there's probably a lot of Indians who feel the same way. It's like, well, no, I'm okay. I'm safe. They're not going to mess with me. I have lots of money, right? Yeah. Sorry, buddy. Doesn't work that way. When they come for you, they come for you. And I think it's a matter. I don't even say it's a matter of time before they start coming for the Indian community, because they're already coming for the Indian community. And the Indian community is growing faster than the Chinese American community. Indian community is soon going to be target number one.
Yeah.
It's coming.
It is. I mean, yeah.
So because if you look at what are the national security concerns for India, right? Because they can't use like the CCP and that kind of stuff, because like Modi's technically friendly and everything else, and so what are they going to use against Indians? Well, I'm sure they're going to figure out some kind of religious route or something like that.
That's what's happened.
They will find some way to demonize and make your community into a monster. And they say, look at these people. Look at what they do. Look at what they do to cows. Look at all they do. Look at what they do to their people. And look at the stuff they believe in. Look at the food that they eat.
Yep. It's been happening, and it's very insidious. I mean, there was a study that came out of Rutgers, NCRI, that actually looked at even a DEI training that concerned, South Asians. And what they found, that even after people were exposed to that, they were actually more hateful. They would agree with statements that, I'd be shocked because, especially if you think about tech industry, you think like you're super assimilated. People aren't judging me for even my culture. It's like whether I can do some sort of, technical skill. Why would anyone assume that I am some, believe in some kind of crazy woo woo and doing all sorts of conspiratorial stuff, on my off time? Like it's such a disconnect. And when you experience it, it is very jarring, because I've even experienced that where I'm like, you know me, you've seen how I am. I speak way better Chinese than and I don't speak a word of Hindi, yet you are assuming I do all of these things. Like it's nuts.
No, but that's exactly it, right? That's the tip of the iceberg. And I think what I want us to do together, not just Chinese Americans and Indian Americans, not just Korean Americans, but with Latinos, with the Black community, with Jews, with Muslims, with Hindus, whoever it is. I want us to all one day just get together and say, we're tired of it. We're sick of all this stuff, and we're not going to let this happen again. And we go out and together as a united front, and we fight this and we win. Because the day that Asians, Latinos, and Black people and everyone else who has a boot on their neck, the day we all turn around and look to see who has that boot on our neck, the day we realize it's the same person is the day we all win. Because when we take our communities and add them together, we're the majority. And that's the future I want.
How far away do you think we are from that? I mean, we've seen some coalition building, but
that's up to us. That's up to us. That's up to our communities. It could happen tomorrow if we had the will, but it won't, right? Because we don't have the will. There's still too many people in our communities who think that if they just be quiet and just be good little workers and good little Asians, that it'll be fine. No, it'll be fine. They won't mess with us. We're the good ones. That's what you've heard that before.
Yeah,
we're the good ones.
We're the good ones. We don't create trouble. We do not. We pull ourselves up by the bootstraps and succeed on merit. Not that we are able to exist here at the pleasure of these institutions that we don't actually control.
That's right. And so they're at least wary of messing too much with the Black community, with the Latino community, because they know that those communities will come and kick their ass. Right. And they do those things. They go attack those communities on a limited basis. But they're happy to come after the Asians because we don't fight back, because we're good Asians, because good Asians don't fight back.
Yeah.
And what the lesson needs to be is, nope, Asians sure as hell are going to fight back. I mean, come on, guys, we're Indian. You guys are Indian. I'm Chinese. We had Tiananmen Square. India is one of the biggest and strongest democracies. Gandhi, you fought off the British.
Yeah.
We have revolution in our blood. Let's go fight. Let's go win. Right? If we say we are the two most successful ethnic groups in America, let's make that happen. Let's show them what we can do.
Yeah, and kind of put the political influence and that social influence to match kind of this economic influence that we love talking about. But like you were saying earlier, I mean, this is the time when it's not enough to have the money. Like, you have to actually back that up with some actual power.
Yes. And what this means is, Indian Americans, if you're listening to this, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your kids. Run for office. If someone is even remotely inclined to run for office, run for office. I don't care if it's city council, school board, state rep, Congress, U.S. Senate. I don't care what it is. Run for something. Run for anything. Get elected. Get into power. Defend your community, and then speak up. Don't just get elected. Don't just get power. But when you have power, defend the community. That's what the one ask was from one of my biggest supporters and one of my first supporters. And I mean, this is a moderate Republican who was giving a very liberal Democrat his first check.
Mm.
And this is a Japanese American whose parents went through the internment.
Oh wow.
And all he said was defend the community, never let this happen again.
Yeah.
And we are on the footsteps of another incarceration. If you look at the history of the Asian community prior to World War II, we are following the same steps. Ban the ownership of land, demonize a community, tell them that every single member of this community is a potential threat, right? Just like in World War II. And the only way to deal with the idea that every single person, if they have a drop of the blood, if they're all a danger, if they have just a drop of that blood, then you better start rounding people up. There is no other solution. Because if you say Asian Americans are a threat to this country, when Donald Trump says that Asian people, the Chinese people, are forming an army in this country, he's saying that there's a threat, right? If I tell you inside our house is a threat, there is a threat to the life and safety of your family inside your house, are you going to ignore that threat? Are you going to pretend that threat is... Or are you going to say to yourself, I'm going to get rid of this threat today and make sure that it never comes back? So what happens when people are called threats?
Then people say they have to go back.
The community needs to start paying attention. This thing will not get better on its own without our involvement. In fact, it will get much, much worse. Right now, you already have, China saying that if there's they're ready to fight the United States if they escalate the trade war into a hot war. I mean, imagine if India gets dragged in that.
Trump did mention India charging a lot of tariffs, and I think that's actually one thing where sometimes with Indians they sort of forget, long time ago, like in the 70s, India and the US were on the opposite sides of the Cold War equation. Today they're allies. Both Biden as well as Trump have made a lot of efforts to appear very close to the Indian Prime Minister. But that's really right now. I mean, the minute the reason why maybe a lot of Indians can be in tech right now and not face the problems that Chinese Americans face is because the U.S. doesn't perceive India as a threat. Or the minute it starts perceiving it as a threat, right? Then it'll change. Absolutely. Why wouldn't it?
That's it. That's all there is. And this is one of the things of talking to the community. In the past, when I've talked to other communities about the alien land law, and I tell them, well, it mainly only affects Chinese and Koreans, and there's some other Asian groups that good. Screw the Chinese. And I'm like, you understand that nobody knows the difference between you and me, right? Like outside of the Asian community, nobody knows the differences between Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, and anything else. You just have Asian face, right? Back 20 years ago, if you had Asian face, everyone just said you were Japanese. Today, if you have Asian face, they said you're Chinese. And people somehow think that, if they're just discriminating against one kind of Asian, then everyone else would be fine. Like, no, my brother.
Yeah.
Nobody knows the difference. When you say Asian and say like Chinese people do X, Y, and Z, they're going to come after Indians too, because nobody knows the difference. They just know that you're the foreigner. They don't care. That's the biggest part. They don't care. Because it's not about an actual policy. It's about they want to hate.
It's a very tough lesson to kind of learn. It takes some, but it is very important because in Asia, there are a lot of countries that, have geopolitical rivalries, they're, these are very large, diverse countries, but it's like here, even if Vietnam and China are not the best of friends back in Asia, here, perhaps the experiences are pretty similar and you're going to be treated in very similar ways.
Yeah. Well, especially like today, a lot of the Asians that are coming are sometimes very wealthy. They made a pretty good life in India and in China. They built up the wealth. They're coming here, and they're used to being like the top dog, and coming here, like the concept that no, I don't care what your money is, you're underclass here.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think people understand that. Right. When you go out there, I don't care how much money you have, the second you open your mouth and there's a heavy Asian accent, people treat you differently. People look at you differently.
Yeah.
And
I've seen
not,
it.
Even without the accent, they treat you differently.
It's very jarring to observe. I mean, you go to pharmacy and it's like a elderly Chinese, couple, their English is fine. I mean, to me, their English is fine, but immediately you can just see the frustration on the pharmacist's face. It's like, oh God, I have to deal with these people. I don't want to talk to them. And it's like, even a microaggression, like very small like that, but it's like, if it's that, mundane of an interaction, just imagine, when you get into more complicated things, your tensions arise. Like it's very scary, actually.
What happens when, your kid's going for the IT job, but the Indian applicant gets it? What happens when you're applying to Yale and, you see the top 30% is all Chinese and Indian, but your kid who has, something close enough grades didn't get in, right? And people get mad. People get real mad about this stuff. And people just start harboring resentment, and it builds and builds and builds. Yeah, at the end of the day, all of this discrimination, all of this, at the heart of this is economic.
Mm-hmm.
At the heart of all this stuff, it's about money. Chinese and Japanese people came to this country for like 50 years, for a long time, and didn't really start coming in big numbers until like the 1850s, when it was the gold rush, California gold, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as Chinese and Japanese people were doing like the crap jobs, the worst jobs, the dirtiest jobs, like sticking like putting the fuse in the dynamite in the railroad. And, they like Asian lives are so worthless to them. Like a lot of times, I mean, there are documented stories where they didn't even bother waiting for them to come out of the mine. They just blew it up as soon as they could. Right. As a joke. Right. Because it didn't matter. They're subhuman.
Yeah.
But the problem was, after the railroad was done, after the gold was mined, Asian people were still here. And the Asian people started doing things. They started farming. They started building businesses, and they started getting wealthy. And while they were doing the crap jobs, nobody really cared. They're just kind of like, helpful rats. Yeah, they're just basically slave labor. But once they started competing against the white businesses, once they started out-competing white workers, then people got mad. Then in the 1850s, they started passing laws, right? 1870, they passed like the first law banning just Chinese women, because they basically saw it as, these people are useful rats, useful vermin. But we should make sure that we control their breeding. Don't bring the women in. Don't let women in. We have to control their breeding. But just a few years later, 1882, they said, screw it. Let's ban the men too. The Chinese Exclusion Act, which didn't just ban Chinese, basically banned all Asians, went from 1882 to 1965. Okay? You think about that. A law that banned your people and mine were on the books for almost 100 years of this nation's 250-year history.
And like you said, it was very recent. It's only like, it's a very, very recent phenomenon that we're even able to be in this country in large numbers.
Yes.
1965.
And our community is completely and absolutely unaware of this fact. Like, I think people feel like, oh, Indians and Chinese people have been here forever. We've always been here. Like, dude, you have not.
And no, we're not. Like, I mean,
even friends that are like 5th and 6th generation Americans, you ask them, do you get asked the question? You know what the question is?
Where are you really from?
Yeah. Every Asian has to answer that question. I know 5th and 6th generation Chinese people who don't speak a lick of Chinese and could not write their family name if you put a gun to their head in Chinese, and they still get asked that question. Yeah. Where are you really from? Like, I'm born and raised in Sacramento. What do you want? What is my answer supposed to be? But this idea that Asian Americans are not really Americans, this is pervasive, right? But it also sets us up for as targets. Because if you're going to mess with somebody, you're going to mess with the people that are perceived as not being one of your own, right?
Yeah.
And if Asian Americans aren't really Americans, then isn't it fair game?
Yeah, especially if our cultures are seen as like, evil, or, we're inherently, much more evil, oppressive, we're not
Conniving.
A culture worth saving. Conniving. Yes. That is a very common one. I hear a lot.
They're like people tell me all these like really, they sound like mythology, like from the Nazis about the Jews. Like they said, well, Chinese people can steal data through walls. They can get your data if they just have access to your wall outlet, and all this stuff. And like, dude, like assume we're going to be able to walk through walls. We'll be able to fly. I don't know. Maybe we're part vampire.
Right.
Right. But it's that kind of stuff. But the people made up those like the Nazis made up the same kind of stories about the Jews, right?
Yeah.
The Jews, they drink blood and they do all this stuff, like blood libel and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. You have a powerless minority and you make them into the enemy.
Yeah. And it can go very quickly. I mean, I see some of the stuff written about the Hindu community and even about us, and I'm like, I am like, what is this, all pervasive, octopus, evil organization you're talking about? We're really not that exciting. But it sticks and people believe it.
Yep. So look, the lesson is get ready. Don't wait until it's too late. Like if the community wants to fight back, it needs to start preparing now. Right?
Absolutely.
And what that means is organizing. What that means is making sure the community is informed and aware of what's going on. It means that the community preps people to run for office and to get elected. Because one of the best ways to defend against this stuff is make sure that you are in power to speak up when the time comes. In my life, I was not planning on being like the person, defending the Asian community in the state. Right? I did not think that was going to be my job.
I was going to ask you how you got into this.
Well, but I'm happy that I'm here, that I'm able to do this because, again, the answer is, well, I mean, the question is, if you're not here doing it, who is?
Yeah.
Right. And one important note, I want to make sure people like know this is like, look, in other states where there were no Asian reps, where there were no Asian elected officials, Black people stood up for our community. Like Black leaders, without even being asked, stood up and fought against these laws because they saw how wrong it was, because the same type of laws have been used against them. And nobody had to explain it to them that you can use property rights to make sure to keep people out of a community. We didn't have to explain it to them. They knew immediately. The reason I tell that story is because I know, one, that the Asian community has a lot of racism issues dealing with Black and Latino people, right? We have a very colorful history of looking down on them and very like quietly being racist against them behind closed doors. But what I'm telling people is the racist tropes that we've been sold, that we hold against other communities, those were fed to us. Those are given to us. We were told that we can never work with those communities. We're told that we have nothing in common with those people. Because if, again, like I said before, if Black people, Asians, Latinos ever got together and said, we're tired of this crap, we're going to win. It's in the best interest of the opposition to make sure that we are never united, that we never fight with each other and fight for each other. And I think that's going to be also a part of it too, is that I think the Asian community must go and build back relationships with other communities. Right. And
really kind of step out of our own shell, right? And really just develop that solidarity.
And learn and understand that many of the things that we were taught were simply wrong and simply were things that were to be used against us. I hope that we do it. And your question is like, when this is going to happen? I don't know. It'll happen when the community is ready for it to happen, which I hope is sooner rather than later. But that's not a thing that I can force.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, you just have to be ready to respond and seize that moment when it comes.
But like shows like yours, like this program, that's a good first step, right? The community needs to know. And what I'm telling people now is, like, if you watch what's going on out there, like our country is under attack. Like our country is being taken apart piece by piece from the inside. This is not a time when people should be waiting for a hero, because no hero is coming. There's no one coming to your rescue. There's no one coming to save you. There's no white knight. There's no like person, like guy in a cape. Nothing. It's just you and me. It's just you and me. Either we do this or we don't. Either fight or lay down. And if you're going to lay down, go lay down somewhere else. I don't want to see you. Because I'm going to fight. Because I'm going to fight.
Yeah, I mean, it's our country, right? Like, I mean, a lot of people are like, I'm going to move to Canada or whatever, after the election. It's like, no, I mean, whether you support Trump or oppose him, like, this is my country. I'm not going anywhere. Yep. You cannot pay me to get rid of my American citizenship. This is my home.
Exactly. And we can't just say that. We need to be screaming that in the streets. We will not go away simply because you don't want us. We're not going away. We're Americans too. This is our country as much as it is yours. I know, like, look, it's gonna be hard getting older generation to work and do stuff. But like, if there are young people who are listening to this, who care, who say like, I can't wait for mom and dad to get on the same page. Yeah. Like, I have to take action to protect them now. Do it. Do it. If you are asking who is going to do this, and you stand up in a room and say, hey, who's in charge of this? Congratulations, you just became the leader.
Yeah, I love that. It's like, you found the problem. Like, if you're going to bring up the problem, you like, be the solution. Like, don't wait for someone else to take care of it.
Correct. Stop waiting for other people to act. Do it yourself. Then that means, and organizing can be anything. Organizing can be like creating a statewide group, raising millions of dollars to go fight this stuff. But it can also just be, hey, it's you, your family, and a couple of friends on a text group, on a chat group, saying stuff out there is messed up. I want our community to be respected. What does that look like? Let people know what the news is. Let them know what's going on. And then organize them. When there's a protest, you call them all up and say, hey, you're part of this group. We're going to go.
Yeah.
When they start seeing Chinese people, Indian people out in the streets protesting something that we've never done before, people will rethink their decisions. Because again, like I said at the beginning, one of the reasons why people come after us is because they feel confident that we will not come after them.
Yeah, right? They don't see any cost.
Bullies don't go fight people who fight back. They mess with people that they think they can get away with. So, I mean, the easy lesson is, well, how about we just teach them? How about we tell them there's a cost? If you come mess with us, there will be a cost.
Well, that's it for this episode of That's So Hindu. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it now with someone who you think will like it too. Please also like, follow, and or subscribe to this show on whatever platform you're listening to it on. You can help ensure that more of these get made by making a donation to HAF at www.hinduamerican.org/donate. Thanks again for listening.